Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources. So, Psychology Spotlight.
Let's do it.
So what I thought could be interesting was, I know when we were talking about the Justice League Unlimited episode Kid Stuff, you had brought up reverse psychology at one point, and so I was talking a bit about how, well, there's not really a reverse psychology kind of thing when it comes to psychology and therapy stuff that I know and do. There is just this general sense of, hey, when you're hitting upon resistance within therapy, so there seems to be a block for the person you're working with. A lot of times trying to just push someone or even encourage someone directly into doing that thing. A lot of times we just naturally end up resisting more. It's like the digging your heels in versus backing up and paying more attention to the resistance happening itself and being like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
There's something getting in the way here. What do we make of that? And exploring that instead of just trying to push past it. So I thought it could be fun to talk about it a little bit more specific to some like superheroes. So like what might resistance look like in therapy with different superheroes and stuff. And like,
Gotcha.
I can talk about what, as a therapist, I might do in that scenario to try and kind of circumvent it. Because resistance is actually, I don't always love that term. We don't always love that term because it can sound like a negative, like, oh, this person's resisting. But if we see it more as a neutral word, something that's like a natural occurrence, it's natural for us to resist things. It's natural for us to have things that slow us down. And in fact, if you're going to therapy, something's getting in your way. So it's natural. So how do you work through it kind of stuff?
So is it kind of like how trying to get Wolverine to listen to any orders that he gets from Cyclops? You just tell him the opposite thing. Wolverine, go fight Magneto. I ain't fighting Magneto. Finally, he listened.
So imagine Wolverine in therapy, right? You'd probably, now granted, the whole Cyclops thing, it's a different dynamic. But he's also still Wolverine, so you could probably still see him being like pretty stubborn, where like if a therapist were to suggest something to him, he'd be like, no. And he's an interesting one because he'd probably be one that, first off, he's not going to trust anyone who does any kind of healthcare because he was experimented on, right? So he's not going to trust you from the get-go at all. And he definitely is hard to convince of things, right? So he's stubborn, he's hard to convince. So he's probably going to be someone coming in that's not going to trust you at first, going to assume you're part of the problem in the system and not be convinced you can even help him. So yeah, he's probably going to be pretty resistant for understandable reasons. Yeah. So, with someone like Wolverine, let's say that they come in, a lot of times with someone who does not trust the system or has trouble trusting people, they make it pretty clear from the get-go. A lot of times, usually one of the issues they're bringing in is that they have trouble trusting people. A lot of times, part of the protection is just making it clear to you, I have walls up. You're going to have to show me that I can trust you, which is fair. Because it's also a problem if you have the opposite thing happening, if someone just like completely trusts you without any evidence, right? That's a problem too. So a lot of times with that is just calling a spade and talking about the distrust that's there, what makes it hard to come into the therapy space, openly talking about the doubts someone has. I'm not really sure you can do anything for me. I've had plenty of people come in and be like, I don't think you can do anything. And it's like, okay, well, you just met me. So it's fair that you don't know if this is going to work for you or not. Something brought you in. So there's something going on that makes you think there's something of use of coming in here. Let's explore that and just see what happens. So a lot of times just like talking it through and labeling the distrust, normalizing it, showing it's okay to have those thoughts and concerns, because then it also opens the opportunity to talk about what does it take to build trust and trying to help make sure that a person is able to grow the trust over time, because some people will struggle to take in the evidence that someone is trustworthy, especially someone like Wolverine, who honestly has had a really rough road, right? He's learned a lot of reasons to distrust people. So it would be something that you'd need to keep coming around to. But yeah, he'd be a really interesting one. Who else you got? Who else can we talk about? These are going to be fun.
I was thinking maybe Spider-Man, just
Hmm.
because I feel like he would be hesitant to even go, just because everyone he gets anywhere close to ends up becoming a supervillain.
I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like,
Yeah,
interesting. I feel like he would be, here's the, okay. Well, part of it would depend on which Peter Parker we're talking about.
that's true.
But I actually think many of them would be open to the idea of therapy. I don't know about Tobey Maguire's, but like Andrew Garfield, I feel like he seems like someone who
Now,
now it
like,
looks like he might have actually gone through some therapy. Actually, Tobey Maguire, a lot of them as they age, it looks like, hey, you've gone through some processes and stuff. Um, so I see his character as seeing the usefulness of therapy. And also I hear your point. So kind of a Wolverine-esque, but it's gonna come off in a very different way for him. So his would be a lot more subtle. So someone like Wolverine, he'd come out of the gates being like, I don't trust you. This isn't gonna help me, and you gotta prove yourself to him. And with Spider-Man, with Peter Parker, the interesting thing would be is I think it would be a lot more subtle, because I think he would be someone who it recognizes more, like thinks, hey, this can help, but subconsciously he might be more hesitant to open up because, like you mentioned, all of these people around him, they either die or they turn into villains. And so his would probably take a while to notice the pattern.
uh
And when it did come up, it would be more pointing out, hey, I'm noticing that it might be something like, I'm noticing that you keep coming in, that there are things going on, and yet, no, it just doesn't feel like we're getting to the core of everything. It seems like we're
right.
staying surface level here. Or there might be certain themes where it's like, seems like when we keep trying to like talk about your uncle's death, maybe, or other things going on for him, seems like the topic shifts or we get off track. It's hard to really hone in on these things and get deeper.
hmm
So his would probably be more subtle, take more time to like to notice the pattern, and then it would be more um helping him noticing when it's happening,
hmm
and then exploring where that might be coming from. So his would be, I feel like once he kind of came to the discovery and explored that,
hmm
his therapy might be done. Versus with Wolverine, I think you'd have to put a lot more work in the front to like get therapy rolling. Both though would be very interesting and very appropriate things to explore with therapy, because if it's playing out there, it's probably playing out in other relationships.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. All right.
Batman, I think the resistance there is he might just not show up for appointments.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
penguins out there.
So that's tricky when it results in a person not showing up or not showing up consistently.
Mhm.
That's hard because it's hard to explore things when a person's not present, right? So those can be really hard. A lot of times that's catching a person where you can. Ideally, it's in a therapy session.
Mhm.
Sometimes you might have to hit them and do more of a therapeutic phone call if things are that chaotic. And so with something like that, it would be more focusing in on, hey, in order for us to actually like hit a therapeutic dose here, be able to explore things, we gotta nail this down. We gotta find a way to make this more consistent, and trying to get at, what's getting in the way. Sometimes it's pure logistics getting in the way or other priorities people have. Other times it's therapy's hard. I think you've mentioned in a podcast episode just like how difficult it can be going into each session and preparing yourself for that. So
Mhm.
some of it could just be like it's hard and you're putting yourself in a difficult spot to do therapy. And so sometimes there has to be like a little bit fits and spurts working on getting someone to the point where they're ready for that consistency.
And being and with it being a superhero, like, that's a lot to unpack. Like, and it's one of those things I feel like it would require a lot of sessions because as a therapist, I feel like you would have to approach it like, yes, your superhero life, how does that make you feel and all that? But also, these are still people that go home and pay rent and have day jobs that are stressful as well. Like, it would be very, very hard to be a superhero and have a boss that was a jerk, right? Like, it would be like that would be very difficult. Like, it's a good thing that like Clark has a decent relationship with Perry White because that had to be difficult for him growing up being Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, this is making me think of another probably what would be a very pervasive resistance factor for superheroes. I think there would be twofold. One would be this stuff is no big deal. So I've seen terrible things. I know awful things going on out there, or I'm working on all these things superhero wise. And so sometimes we can minimize our own internal experiences in a way that's harmful to us. We essentially invalidate them and devalue what's going on with us because we're like, no, 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 there's all this other stuff happening that I need to prioritize,
Mhm.
which would very much be something that you would probably see with a lot of superheroes. And then let's add to that, let's say Superman. Okay, you're Superman. It would honestly probably be hard to like feel okay complaining about stuff or like acknowledging that
Right.
something's wrong, right? Because you're Superman. You have all these powers. You can do all of these things that no one else can do. It means the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And at the same time, just I guess that that sense of privilege in some ways that can come with some of the superhero stuff
Yeah.
would probably be difficult. Kind of like how celebrities or influencers or other people or people who have a lot of money or other things that kind of set them up in a
Mhm.
way that we like put them on a bit of a pedestal. There's a lot of times this discussion of how like it's hard to be allowed by others and by yourself to be upset or to be miserable or to
I mean, yeah.
acknowledge tough stuff. So I think that would come up a ton with superheroes. And so just
Yeah.
focusing in on the like this is not like a one-to-one comparison. It's not about how this compares to other things. It's about like how are you and what's going to help you in terms of your quality of life and getting you where you need to go. Everybody's got their stuff,
Yeah. Like it
and finding a way to be okay with that, sit with it.
and it's probably the little things too cuz someone like Superman, he gets annoyed every month having to pay for health insurance. He's like, "Are you kidding me? Like this much of my paycheck, I don't even
I've never thought about that before.
get sick." Like it was
This is why I love chatting with you. I never thought of that before.
he has to go to like pay for health insurance so that he can get his fake eyeglass subscription. His I mean, I doubt he gets cavities,
Mm.
right? Collision insurance, which he definitely doesn't pay for as Superman. He throws people's cars across town all the time.
Honestly, the
But
thing he would probably need the most is mental health
it was
insurance.
mental health. I was about to say it's just for the therapist copay. That's the only thing he has health insurance for. That's it. That's all. That's it.
That's
Because Lois
hysterical.
has
That's
better
beautiful.
coverage than him. So once they got
Yeah.
married, he probably just slipped under hers,
There you
baby.
go. Oh, man. Yeah, that would be frustrating for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But yeah, I mean, that's really true. Really, when it comes to health insurance, probably all he needs is the mental health insurance
Yeah, that's it.
because, I mean, he definitely seems to struggle with things mentally in a way that is more
Yeah.
human compared to like the physical stuff. Because
It's
like
the
once the
only
kryptonite goes away, he's like, I'm fine.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. His best stories are when he is dealing with something that he can't
yeah,
lift or punch into space, you know? Um
agreed.
but yeah, I think he would probably be more open to it, but just I feel like his hard thing would be actually locking in and turning off his super hearing about what's going on out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That and I think that's a great example too. So like sometimes the resistance is happening because you're hitting on something that's actually very therapeutically important to what you're trying to do. And so a lot of the ones we've talked about, I think have hit on that quite a bit. But then absolutely there can also be things where a person is just struggling to prioritize the therapy, um, and turning turning off your super hearing, turning
Mhm.
off the ability to go help
Yeah.
people for that hour, um, that would be tough for
Yeah.
Superman, I think. I mean, I don't know what his rules are with Lois, but it seems like there are very few limits that get set
Yeah.
around that.
I
And
don't
that might
yeah.
actually be a piece for therapy. It
Yeah.
might be something that isn't initially what he comes in with. Maybe it is. Maybe Lois, hey, maybe it's couples therapy because Lois is like, oh my God, he's like never around and never fully paying attention. But it could be something where like it comes up in therapy and is like, okay, this isn't what you came in for, but like noticing your attention's very split and this has to affect your life. Like, how does this factor into everything?
I don't know how he has a job. Like, he's a
I don't either.
reporter, right?
That helps, I guess, but
It does, but half the time, like, he's Superman and Lois is reporting on what he's doing.
yeah.
What does he report on? Like, what does he do? Like, Jimmy Olsen is his best friend and takes pictures for him and Lois, but it's like
Mm.
most of the time Jimmy Olsen's taking pictures of Superman. Like, there's so many questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't
There are
think
very
like, yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I understand why Peter Parker keeps a job as a photographer. It's like, oh yeah, I happen to be friends with Spider-Man and he lets me take good pictures of him. Superman, what is he reporting on?
Spider-Man's like secretly the first like influencer,
Yeah.
the first like YouTuber
Yep.
essentially. Like he has to set it up where he's like going by and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially what all the
Influencer in the wild.
YouTubers have
It's
to
like, is
do
that
with
guy
their videos.
Spider-Man posing? Like he invented the selfie, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
So, one of the characters that I think would be really difficult is Deadpool.
Jesus.
We've talked about him before.
Nothing
So I've hit on this
serious.
a bit, but so he's one that like on the one hand, I feel like he would be into therapy. On the other hand, he really wouldn't be. So he's one of those where it can sometimes be frustrating because sometimes people are very much push pull. And this can happen
Uh-huh.
in a lot of different ways. It's not always this like super sporadic, hyperactive Deadpool version.
Uh-huh.
It can sometimes like be in very emotional ways or like someone saying they really want to do treatment, but then they don't follow through with like the things y'all come up with. It can happen in a whole heck of a lot of different ways, but it can be frustrating when essentially you're being told, hey, here's what I need. And then you provide it. And then the person doesn't go along with it. Essentially, they do the opposite or they don't do it or
Uh-huh.
there's always a reason they couldn't do it or sometimes it can turn into this like push pull where it's like I'm being asked to do things and then it's not being done and it's like and with him there's like this frenetic energy with it too. So he could be really he could be really really tricky. He is very smart, he's very witty, he's always going to have an answer for things, he can deflect
Yeah.
very well.
I was gonna say that's the part that would get annoying. He takes nothing seriously, deflects everything. Everything's sarcasm, everything's a joke. Like, he would have a hard time just finding a therapist that wouldn't just walk out of the room. Just like, I cannot do this, bro. Like, this is
There would
I
be
gotta eat. I gotta eat.
a few things for him that I think would be really important. One of them, so I've had conversations with people before where there are people that I work with that I interrupt. It's more likely to be with people who tend to talk a lot
Uh-huh.
or who have more of like a hyperactive energy, or if there's just like really pervasive thoughts and beliefs that come out for a person that they have trouble shifting out of.
Mhm.
Sometimes there needs to be like an interruption of the flow. Or if if someone cognitively has something where it's very hard for them to communicate, sometimes you almost have to help them corral themselves to like help them guide what they're trying to tell you. So there are a
Mhm.
number of different reasons where you might actually be interrupting someone fairly often, depending on the situation.
Mhm.
It helps to have those conversations with them though. Like, hey, here's something going on. Okay, you're like bouncing all over the place. We're not really getting anywhere. And so sometimes I kind of do a little bit of interruption. I'm like, hey, here's what I was just doing. Let's talk about it. How did it feel? What was that like? Did it seem to be helpful for us? Other times we might plan ahead and be like, hey, here's this thing that's going on. Like, let's figure out what we can do to adjust how we communicate with each other. He would definitely be one though where you'd have to corral him. And he would also be one where forcing as best you can a shift in the emotion and
Mhm.
a shift to silence. So trying to force some moments of pause and trying to essentially reflect the emotions that are disconnected for them. So if a person is using a lot of humor, making sure that you're not just laughing along and laughing it off, but
Mhm.
you're expressing the emotion underlying that humor to try and help pull them into more comfort, being able to experience some of that themselves.
So, and here's a question for you then. When you're trying to corral someone like that, because normally when I think of therapy, I think of it being very open-ended questions where you
Mm.
ask someone and then they give you an essay for an answer, like a lot of short answer questions. When you're trying to corral someone, is it one of those things where you would shift into yes or no questions?
That's a great question. There are times where I use more yes or no questions. You're right. So, in general, we're encouraged to use open ended questions. We're encouraged to reflect back to people things that they're doing and saying rather than just like provide a bunch of our own input. There are a lot of different skill sets you might be using, but in terms
Mhm.
of like if we're asking someone questions, yeah, we tend to veer more toward open ended. So, there are times where I use more yes or no questions. If someone's overwhelmed, for example, simplifying things down so that they can do a few yes or no questions, build some confidence, or like move through that overwhelm a little bit. With Wolverine, you definitely need some open ended questions because if you went yes, no, that's all he'd give you. Maybe. So with Deadpool, I would potentially shift towards some yes or no questions. I would be more likely to maybe avoid questions in general because he's going to just give you a bunch of information. So I'd probably be more likely to summarize or reflect back information, but specifically highlighting the pieces he's trying to deflect and distract from,
Okay.
or specifically noting the deflection and the distraction. Questions he might not need the questions to like get himself rolling. He might need to be directed a bit more to focus
Mhm.
in on certain pieces. So I might just use less questions with him in general. I was just picturing doing a suicide risk assessment with him. That would be tricky. So there are some like yes or no questions with suicide risk assessments, but I got to tell you, I think doing a suicide risk assessment with Deadpool would take like an entire hour
Yeah.
because he would be so talkative, he'd make a bunch of jokes. He would essentially make it probably sound like he's super suicidal and not suicidal all at the same time.
Oh my
He would be
gosh.
very,
I'm frustrated just hearing you describe
yeah,
it.
he, some people are just really hard to kind of get a sense of where they're at. And I think he would
Yeah.
be one of those. And some people also just don't respond well to formal assessment. And I think he's one of those also. So he's definitely someone where I think you have to like reflect back a bit. Yeah, pay attention for what he's saying amongst the chaos
Mhm.
and highlight those things back to him. And then maybe you have some questions, but like focusing in on the like most important bits of what he's saying because there's going to be something important in there. It's just you got to sift through the distractions.
Yeah, that would be yeah, there's a couple of them that I feel like are like that for sure, just because it's like, okay, I'm not getting anywhere with you. You are all over the place. You are like, I think it's the deflection that would get to me because I think, like, I don't, at this current place, I know that I'm not patient enough to be a therapist. I
I mean,
know
you're a
I'm not patient.
teacher.
Yeah, but like, I feel like as a teacher though, you have a little bit more control. Like you don't like follow my rules. I can
Mm.
just kick you out of class. Like you can
Yeah,
just
that's fair.
that can and plus I'm virtual. I can just mute you, right? Like that is a game changer. That's a game changer. If I ever went back to a regular classroom, I don't know how I would do it. I'm like, where's my mute button? I don't want to hear this person. Like I can, yeah, I just, yeah. But yeah, I know that if somebody came in and I'm like trying to help them and they're just like not even doing it, it's like, okay, what are you doing? Why are you here? I mean, I know
So I
sometimes it's
sometimes
court
ask
orders.
that question. So there are times where I share my frustration with people or whatever the emotional response I'm having or the thoughts that come to me because of the situation. It
Mhm,
depends on how well I know the client, um, what their personality style is. Because obviously if I'm providing my own experience with them, I want to use it in order to propel us forward. So honestly, though, sometimes I need to share the frustration I'm feeling in order for us to get out of a stuck pattern we're having. So let's say like they're asking for help and I offer help and they say, no, that's not going to work. And then they ask for help and it just keeps repeating. I'm going to get frustrated. And there are times where, so it's hard to explain, but when you're doing therapy, you're essentially building a skill to like be there, present in the room with this person, interacting with them, while also being present within yourself
mhm,
and having a sense of where things could maybe move forward with things, both long term and within the session that you're in. And also paying attention to your own reactions and experiences within what's going on as best you can. And so with that, if I'm noticing that frustration's building up, as my frustration builds, if it's getting past a certain point, my ability to be an effective therapist goes down.
mhm,
And so if I am noticing certain types of frustration, I've learned that for me as a therapist, it's helpful to point that out and be like, I gotta be honest with you. I'm feeling really frustrated right now. And just explaining where that's coming from. And not like a you, but it just here's what I'm experiencing right now is that,
mhm.
you're asking for help and you're really wanting it. And then I'm trying to provide these things. And then but then like, you're saying, oh, this doesn't work and that doesn't work. And I guess I'm really frustrated and I'm not really sure why are you here? I'm just wondering. I might even laugh a little bit or, I make sure that it's coming from a place of like, I really want to figure this out so that we can make therapy useful to you. And so I have had times where I'm like, well, why are you here? You know what? Why come here at all? And that's not meant to be a like, ugh, get out of my office. It's
Mhm.
meant as a, hey, something's making it so that what we're doing isn't helpful, and yet you're still coming back. So, like, clearly there's a reason to be here because why else would you go through this? And sometimes you just got to throw it out there and be like, so why are you here? Or, "What- I'm feeling frustrated with the situation. How are you feeling about it?" And most of the time they're frustrated too. So, putting those things out there can be helpful. Or sometimes too, sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with the client. We haven't talked about the fact that like sometimes I might do something that wasn't the best
Okay.
or I'm not perfect, God forbid. But I'm not perfect. So there might be things that I do that they really don't like, or there might just be a mismatch between us or a misunderstanding of some sort, or something happens where we just end up on different pages and
Mhm,
aren't in agreement. So there are also times where you might kind of hit a rift. And the same sort of thing is it can be really uncomfortable. But this is a unique kind of relationship where you can come through the conflict to the other side
mhm.
in a way that can be really hard with other relationships. But if you can figure that out there, it can really open up opportunities elsewhere. Because a lot of us don't like dealing with conflict. We either
Right.
get
No, no,
too
no.
aggressive or we're too passive or it's uncomfortable. And so whether it's reacting to something that's their resistance because of something internal, or whether it's something within your relationship, or maybe something you've even done as the therapist, it can actually be really helpful to just talk those things out, because it's helping to show that conflict is not a bad thing per se, and we can actually use it to move forward. And usually those are really helpful points that you can look back at with therapy and be like, yeah, that actually really helped move things along.
Okay. Okay. Um, I do have one more.
Okay.
One more. Mind readers. Because I feel like it would be hard for them to go to therapy because the only thing they would be doing is trying to figure out what the therapist is thinking.
Depends.
Okay.
So some clients are really going to want to know what you think about them, or they'll be convinced that they know what you think about them. And that actually might be one of the things that you're processing through with them. And so the interesting thing here is that in some ways, being a mind reader could make all of this more difficult, because you might end up almost like OCD, checking constantly,
Okay.
right?
Right.
And being compulsive, always checking like, hey, what do people think of me? What do people think of me? What do people think of me? On the flip side, it could be kind of a cognitive behavioral thing where a lot of it is trying to help people reframe their beliefs about things in a more helpful way. So, for example, there are folks who, if they have like really low self esteem, for example, they might be perpetually convinced that other people see them really negatively. So, potentially for the mind reader, the nice thing for them is they know what you're thinking.
Right.
So,
No motive.
now, I guess they could always argue with themselves, well, maybe there's something subconscious underneath the thoughts. I don't know. Maybe it's more complicated than that, but they can literally check, where some people will be so convinced they might check with you, but at the end of the day, they're like, oh, well, they might just not want to say anything bad to me. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not telling me the whole truth, right? So a mind
Mm-hmm.
reader, maybe in some ways, could, if they used it correctly, could do some good reality testing. One of the tricky things that would happen with a mind reader in therapy is, so I'm thinking about how there's a method you take on. And so there are different styles to different therapists. But for example, I'm not really sure psychodynamic or psychoanalytic work would work for you unless you can turn it off
Mm-hmm.
and you're someone who won't be tempted to like turn it on and like listen in on everything that your therapist is thinking. Because there are some therapy styles that are more prone to the therapist be trying to be more neutral or not provide too much, and is more just guiding and directing you within your own stuff to build you
Right.
toward these insights, right?
Right.
That kind of work, unless you can really be strict with yourself as a mind reader, would be really difficult, because you would probably be I would be really tempted to, read the later chapters in the book essentially. Like,
Yeah.
let me mind read what they're thinking, and you're essentially going to find out where they're trying to lead you to, which then takes away from the whole process. So I'm not sure psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, and those kinds of styles would work well. If you were working with a more like directive, like someone who's more behavioral, or someone who's more cognitive, who's like a little bit more directive, I don't think it would have as much of an impact. You still might
Mm-hmm.
end up reading a few chapters ahead, but those types of, if you have a therapist who already tends to have a more interactive style, um, it would affect less things. But also, like, keep in mind, I was like, hey, sometimes I might share that I'm frustrated or this, that, and the other.
Mm-hmm.
If they weren't able to filter the mind reading, the therapeutic relationship would just be a lot harder, because they're going to have a harder time seeing you as a therapist, because your therapist, they might bring in their own shit sometimes, but it's always supposed to be as a way to focus on you and utilize
Right.
things to you. It
Right.
is a relationship focused on the client.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're mind reading, you're going to know how my day was. You're going to know that I'm tired. You're going to know that I had a fight that I'm, trying to repress to the back of my mind. You're going to know that I'm tired and I just want to get to the end of the day. You're going to know that I'm distracted halfway through the session, because we're humans too. And so in general, yeah, mind readers would be tricky, because unless you can get yourself to turn that off a bit, it would just take a lot more conversations, I think, around that therapeutic relationship, and trying to just, you'd probably have to redirect that person a bit and encourage them more to open up because they
Hmm.
might be more hesitant because, like, you know, let's if they know that there's other stuff going on in your life, they're going to be less likely to want to quote unquote burden you,
Right.
even though that's your job. So you might have to just do a little bit more work around helping someone open up and still treat you as their therapist.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's an interesting one. That was a great question.
Cool. Yeah, that was the one that was the one I was saving for last.
Yeah, I like it. I
Thanks
like
for
it.
nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.